start with the roll call.
So good morning.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You've had a long
Thank
day.
you. Good afternoon. Based on who I see in the room, it appears we do have a quorum. So I will just do the roll call. Chair Grimes.
Present.
Chair
We're on a roll.
Mayor Blackwell.
Present.
Ronnie Cannon.
Present.
Stephen Cavanis.
Present.
LaRon Clayton.
Present.
Colleen Cotter is not here at the moment. I do expect her. Dr. Modlin.
Present.
Dr. Gullett is running a few minutes behind, but she will be here. She sent me a text message. Malak Rashid.
Present.
Am I pronouncing your name right?
Malak.
Because with Naila, I have
Yes.
to focus. Malak. Levine Ross. Yanela Sims. I do not see Yanela here. Eddie Taylor.
Here.
Sheila Wright. She is on her way as well and sent me a text message. Reverend Chalker is not feeling well and will not be here. Here is Colleen. Welcome.
Thank you, sorry.
Denise Contreras also will not be here. And if I may just take a moment to introduce our
Yes, please.
two newest members. Today, we welcome two new members to the Citizens Advisory Council on Equity, Malak and LaRon. Malak is the Director of Development at Smart Development, a nonprofit serving refugees and immigrant populations. She's also an independent nonprofit consultant at United Funding Consultant, where she has led organizational development, compliance, and grant and fund development and raised a whole lot of money, over $15 million on minority-led organizations. She has a deep commitment to community impact and serving at-risk populations, and she's the proud daughter of Palestinian and Muslim immigrants. She obtained both her bachelor's degree, majoring in poli-sci and international politics, as well as her master's in public administration with a nonprofit management and urban planning certificate at Cleveland State University. She started her professional career as a human rights coordinator, which led her to become a freelance grant writer and consultant. She has grassroots efforts in the Arab, Muslim, and immigrant communities of Northeast Ohio for years through continuous volunteerism. LaRon is a highly experienced professional as well who's held various leadership roles in organizations such as Volunteers of America Ohio, and Indiana, Cleveland Yoga, Cleveland Department of Public Health, and the AIDS Task Force of Greater Cleveland. He has a background in social work and military service as a human resource specialist in the United States Army Reserve. LaRon has also worked in mental health and HIV outreach coordination roles. He has a Master's of Business Administration from the University of Phoenix and a bachelor's degree in social work, also from Cleveland State University. He has a strong blend of business acumen and social service expertise and is a proud U.S. Army veteran. His professional journey has equipped him with skills in developing data-driven strategies, ensuring regulatory compliance, and fostering community partnerships. He's passionate about leveraging his experience to improve lives and strengthen communities and drive positive change. To both of you, Malak and LaRon, we thank you very, very much, and I thank you personally for your willingness to serve on this council. On behalf of CASE, its members, congratulations and welcome. So thank you.
Hey.
Malak and LaRon, I want to just say to you how grateful I am to you to choose to serve in this way. You are both really very busy individuals serving our community, have a lot on your plates as community leaders already, and I'm honored that you would choose to join us in this work, and grateful to the county executive for the insight to appoint you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All righty. From here, we'll move into a moment of silence and reflection.
So I'm just going to indulge you for a moment, if I may. In 1990, I walked into a polling station for the first time in my life. Since then, when I am eligible, I've consistently voted in every election. In 41 days, I will walk into a polling station again to cast my vote. Every election is important. Every election, from school board to the President of the United States of America, in some way tangibly impacts some aspect of our lives. But this November is especially important. We are a nation governed by its people. Democracy, freedom, and the right to vote are inextricably related. You cannot have one without the other. Our democracy is the exemplar of the democratic participatory process, whereby we, the people, select and elect our representatives. Freedom is our right to speak, to think, and to act without hindrance, without coercion, without restraint, or fear of retaliation from the government. Our vote is our currency, not to be squandered or suppressed. There are too many names on an extremely lengthy list of those who fought for our democracy, our freedom, and our right to vote. And those fights were those fights were for the eradication of agricultural slavery, Jim Crow, and the Black Codes. Those fights were for the 14th and 15th Amendments to our Constitution and the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Those before us fought to provide for people like me, who look like me, to have a fundamental right to vote, which had historically only been afforded to white male landowners. Voting is a duty and a responsibility. Our vote is our voice. Our vote is our opportunity to be heard and to have our say. Our vote is the avenue by which we are able to participate in our democracy. As members of CASE, we have pledged to advocate, to plan, to strategize, to delineate, and to deliver policies and practices that will benefit an equity of opportunity for every member of our community. I am sure each of us in this room will vote, but let's do more than cast our singular vote. Let's pledge to guarantee that we will identify as many people as possible throughout our communities who have not voted. And when we identify those folks, we must pledge to do whatever we must to ensure that they will vote in this November's most critical election. There is so very much on the line this November: our democracy, our freedom, and our vote. I thank you for indulging me.
Clerk Burke, thank you. That was a
Sorry
powerful,
about my blah, 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 blah.
that was powerful and timely.
Yeah,
Thank you.
by my voice.
Clerk Burke, do we have any public comment on the rest?
We do not have any public comment here today.
All righty, thank you. With that, I'll turn to the county executive for
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks to our two new board members for taking on this audacious task. It's great to have you. Has everybody introduced, or should we, just for their benefit, just real quick, like, just for you guys to know who's from where and what?
Yeah,
Okay.
I met you, we were all at the same hearing. Colleen Cotter from the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. This is my second term.
Hi, I'm Heidi Gullett from Case Western School of Medicine.
Stephen Cavanis, team leader.
Valerie Wright, CSU.
Kimberly Coleman, Department of Human Resources.
Sarah Namastal, Human Resources.
Jamila Murdoch with DEI, sitting in for Lenora Lockett.
Reed Stephan, Department of Law.
Laurel Demansky Diaz, Justice and Health Equity Officer for the county.
Nicole English with Public Works.
Debbie Berry with the Executive's Office.
Good afternoon, Eddie Taylor, Taylor Oswald.
Mayor Blackwell, City of Maple Heights.
Ronnie Cannon, Towards Employment.
Dr. Charles Modlin, I'm VP Chief Health Equity Officer at Metro Health and a surgeon. My second term.
We also have to my left, she snuck in, although she missed my very powerful moment of silence. And many of you know her, although she absconded and left me. But she is now back as a colleague and a partner in another role. So, Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura Black, for anyone who hasn't met me before. I used to work for Clerk Burke for a number of years, and in that role, I also supported the case. So I'm popping in to say hello. I did abscond, and I went over to Metro for a little while, where I worked with Dr. Bondman, and now I'm back and I'm working with County Council with Levine. Glad to see everybody.
We're so happy to have her back. She doesn't know she's still gonna support it.
Thank you. I'm Cheryl Denton. I'm the Executive Assistant to Clerk of Court, Naila Bird, and I assist with the administrative task for the case. Welcome.
And does a great job. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Cheryl, for everything.
And by the way, we know you're always behind the scenes, but
Yeah.
please.
Hi, Todd, my team.
Important.
He becomes a very important lifeline.
Yes, he's terrific, Todd.
Yeah, exactly. Terrific, Todd. I like that. Well, and I'm Chris Renee, County Executive. Thank you again for signing up. And for some of you, I know you were reappointed recently, so thank you too. But for everybody, just want to say always grateful to be with you here at CASE. And I really appreciate our leadership team who's leading us. Thank you, Rita and Naila. Who, by the way, I said this at our cabinet meeting in this room the other day, but Naila is most recently being recognized in her many accolades, but as the Norman S. Minor Bar Association, African American Bar Association, and its for which award? The
Trailblazer
Trailblazer
Award.
Award. So. I'm lucky I get to work with her every day, and then my rest of my cabinet team. But I just want to say, a few of you were with me yesterday for a meeting, just to get ready for this meeting, but also to talk some other matters. And committee chair and chair, I just want to say thank you for the most important hour of the day yesterday for me, and I really mean that. I feel, and I want to just let everybody know, I feel this is every commission, every committee, every advisory committee, they're all different. At the county, we have 70 that we appoint to. We're always looking for board members for different boards and commissions. Amounts to about 700 people that we appoint to various commissions and boards. But there truly is no committee, commission, advisory committee like this. And I said this to some of the folks that were here yesterday with me. I take very, very seriously the work of this organization, and I want to just say personal appreciation to you, because it's to have as many different eyes on issues that relate to equity and some of the things we need to right course in this community, the better. But this is a very focused group, and I appreciate your counsel from outside the walls here that help us be as good as we can be when inside the walls, but also back out in the community. So thank you. Let me see, what do I want to report on that's news of the day? I guess as a segue to a team report today, I was out at the Grafton Corrections Institute on Friday, and it's a state prison. We did it as a kind of a best case practice that we had heard about. A couple of our team members had been there before, and I was glad I got to spend better part of 5 hours out at Grafton. It's a segue to this conversation in many ways, but I've said from day one, and met with many of these individually about this, we have an audacious task to build something, but I don't wake up every day just wanting to build a jail. I want to see a better system of justice that serves our population, our citizens, our neighbors, our family, our friends in this community better. So we went to Grafton to see how things worked within the confines of a jail, but a lot of what I speak about, and Nayla and I and a lot of others here work on, is the upstream, work of how we're actually thinking about how we minimize the number of persons who are coming through the jail and justice system. And that, as you guys know, is a myriad of things, starting with job opportunities, quality schools. You can go way up the river and talk about day one issues, and also systemic racism that has caused horrific injustice inside of our justice system. But we work upstream on a lot of issues, and I mentioned to a couple of the committee leaders yesterday, somebody had an impact on me the day before Friday when we went to Grafton, and they said, think about not just the programs we provide, but the systems. If you're gonna make change, programs are gonna help, but they're not gonna change systems, right? So you have to think of programs and systems. And I think that's apropos to this endeavor that we are bringing forth with this County Central Services campus. If that sounds abstract to newcomers, yes, there's a jail on campus, but the hope is that there's a campus of services that help heal. Just about 2 hours ago, I was with Randall McShepard, who wears many hats, but one he was wearing today was the Ridolph Farms Urban Farm program that he runs, and was with Sarah Continenza, that's South Euclid councilwoman, that's running Food Strong. The reason we were talking to them is to see if there's opportunity to partner on campus when we do build out in Garfield on some kind of workforce training opportunities, culinary, gardening, farming, and such. But that's just one peel-off example of a conversation we had today. But going back to Friday at Grafton, what we saw, and a number of you have been out there, like Nayla, Laurel, you've been out there, I think Nicole, Debbie, people on our team that have been out there could speak to. They've changed the game even within the walls that they work in. Campus is probably a 1950s operation in terms of when it was built, but the brick and mortar doesn't really speak to what's actually going on there. What they've transformed on their workforce side with staff and with residents is culture. And and we saw a really, really incredible culture at Grafton. And how do people feel that they're living purposeful daily lives? Let me just give you what we saw on the 360 look around Grafton. We walked in and we saw, first of all, family reunification happening on site, family visitation. We saw, this is an all-male facility, we saw dads with their kids and grandkids. It's a pretty heartwarming, heart-wrenching, all at the same time experience. But that was the very first thing we saw walking in. As we walked into the campus, we saw people as an open campus, as a state facility is different from a county facility in a lot of different ways. But to see people actually walking the grounds freely and also working the grounds in terms of community gardens, maintenance that they were attending to, the beauty of the grounds. It's ironic to use the word beautiful on a place that's so complicated, right? But what our residents were putting into the spaces and that they live in was incredible. When we walked past the Family Visitation Center and the outdoor garden space, we saw an incredible work center where persons are learning trades and tools ranging from welding to studio music production to their own podcast within that broadcast to other state facilities, to violin. There was a violin lesson going on. There were probably no less than 10 people in the lesson, but it's taught by a resident to the residents. They had college, everything from GED attainment to community college matriculation. I believe they have a partnership with Ashland College, if I remember right. So persons seeking degrees at the site. I could go on, but the recreational facilities were profound. The Cleveland Cavaliers had just recently not only put in a new floor in the basketball arena, which looked like an everyday high school gym take one of the high school gyms that you really appreciate and modern, but not only did the Cavs contribute to the floor and some of the finishings, they played a game there. And then they had it more important than even the game itself. They had conversations, players to residents about life. There's a group working on the workforce side, everything from waste management to welding, as I mentioned. And I was taken by the purposeful work of residents who were building bunk beds for children in Cleveland from Lorain County to Cuyahoga County for those that a parent couldn't afford a bed. They were refurbishing, you guys are familiar with what look like giant mailboxes, but boxes where clothing donations are made. Their work was to refurbish the boxes. They're 7 feet tall and large things that you place clothing for donations in. Everywhere you turn, there was purpose. Perhaps the most important, at least from my perspective, and our team could talk more about it, all those incredible skill building opportunities, they had a certain wing that two gentlemen that have been in one for a while, that's coming out in January, he landed in there at 17 and spent 30 years in the state prison. He's a Clevelander, he's coming home. His mom lives just more or less across the street from Metro Health Hospital. And he and one other colleague who had been in a terrible altercation on a game night of a Cavs game night and circumstances such that he landed in jail for a while. Those two young gentlemen, and I still call the 47-year-old a young gentleman, but because he needs to get years back, and he needs to get it back. But we want them to consult with us because they created a center that they call the Normalcy Center. And the Normalcy Center is basically how can you adapt within the walls to life as normal as it could be. It was everything from how they literally treated their living quarters, things as simple as addresses that look like street addresses that would be painted on any one of our homes, rather than just a door with a small portal. The way they handled just their living conditions. The furnishings themselves, they took great pride in, frankly, furniture that will look like you might have in your den or your living room in the facility. They work on maintaining, cleaning, they've got a sewing group. Everything you can imagine in this communal lifestyle, but particularly in this one wing that was all about normalizing and adjusting to the fact that many are in there for a long time, but they have a community. So all that is a big, big backdrop. And I think, however, Chair, we could show more of our team, more about this. I always yield to people that know a lot about this. Ronnie, my heart's always thinking about you and what you've been through in your life. And if you've been out there or seen it or been in it, it's an impressive place right now.
Definitely is.
Yeah. But I think our hope is to bring more of what I just described, and this is just one of many places we've been to, but it's the most local and probably the best I've seen. We've been to Nashville, we've been to Indianapolis, we've been to Franklin, all doing better than we're doing with the current facility that we have. So as a team shows you kind of the figure ground plan of a brick and mortar facility today, there's a lot of things that are going to happen and they are important, but the most important thing we can do is work with residents to change culture, even though some people might be in for 3 days in our county jail, some people might be in for 200 days. But no matter how many days you're there, can you leave better than you came in terms of your health, your wellness, and your peace of mind? And are there programs that we can offer that can help with the benefits of return? So I don't want to leap too far, too fast, too forward, but as you see kind of just a general schematic of 30% design of a facility, we're as interested in what happens within and how it interfaces with the community. And I mentioned to our chair and a couple of committee chairs yesterday that at the very end of our meeting, that I was hoping we could consider breaking out with some committees on things ranging from education to community engagement, workforce to health and wellness. And can we, as a committee, lean in on our design team to get a best outcome? And I need some help. Often Yvonne Conwell's here at the committee, this committee. I think Meredith is pretty familiar with us. If you don't know Meredith, that's Meredith Turner. But I have work to do with many of our council members just to kind of promote the idea of this campus style. And we're working a little against DRC, Department of Rehabilitation's Corrections, kind of framework of how you frame up, how you do what you do. But Annette Chambers-Smith, who's the director, working for Governor DeWine's office, we found her to be a breath of fresh air. She said to me a few months back, don't let us stand in the way of what you desire to do. And that was sort of liberating, you know. So we want to push the envelope on how we bring forth something that's modern, humane, and helpful. So taking Grafton to Cuyahoga County, maybe as a segue to this presentation, I'd be interested. We got a lot of design expertise around this table, but within staff and beyond. I'm also interested on the program design that helps people and helps change systems. So maybe I'll leave it at that. Did I miss much there, guys? Or okay.
You did great.
All right. Thanks for the time.
Thank you,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
We have some other business, but we do intend, and welcome, Member Wright. We have some other business and do certainly intend to come back to this dialogue. So, County Executive, I hope you can remain with us. I want to share some comments in moving us forward that really speak to the work of our subcommittees going forward and how that work both aligns to the current priorities that the county executive has shared with us, and especially this campus, but also help us respond to our charge to be lifting up those priorities that the community is concerned about, and recommendations that help to further the system as a whole in advancing equity. And so I'm excited to have several of our subcommittee chairs here who have been coming together with me for conversations like we had yesterday with the county executive, but also to support planning so that we can set some strategy for this body that helps to further the work that is planned with the Central Services Campus, the Child Wellness Center, the work around women's health, and then also this holistic work of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and really ending and dismantling racism and the disparities that it creates at a systems level. So I want to reintroduce and introduce our subcommittee chairs who are here. I'll start to my right since I was looking this way with Colleen Carter. Member Carter has graciously agreed to chair our Justice Subcommittee to support that aspect of our work as a body and the role that justice across many dimensions that include criminal justice but are not exclusive to criminal justice in alignment with the legislation that created this body. So I'll pause and turn to you, Member Carter, in case there's anything you want to say. She's looking at me like.
I'm like, oh, I wasn't prepared. No, I'm very excited. It's a daunting. I'm humbled to be part of this group in general, but leading a subcommittee in particular. And I do appreciate the shift in focusing on the holistic, the justice system in general, because the intersection of civil and criminal and, jail is part of it, the courts and who's going into jail, all of that is part of it. Not that we can, as you like to say, boil Lake Erie, but I'm excited. So if there are any members who are interested in joining this newly formed subcommittee, you're not behind because we haven't done anything in our new, please connect with the chair or with me.
Thank you so much. Next to Member Carter and is Dr. Heidi Gullett, the chair of our health care equity, probably saying all of this wrong, but our subcommittee that is focused on health and healthcare and the disparities and inequities that exist in that space. Dr. Gullett's been chairing this subcommittee for quite some time, but we have a renewed commitment, particularly to taking a look at systems mapping and the possibilities that exist with that framework, which, welcome, Councilwoman
Just
Turner,
talking about
just
you.
mentioned your name. Councilwoman Conwell's coming, should be here in a second.
We have two newcomers too, I don't know if you guys have met. Councilwoman Turner. Sorry.
That's all right. So, Dr. Gullett, I'll turn to you in case there are things you want to share.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair Grimes. I think for this time is really a pivot for this entire council. The first few years, we really spent a lot of time trying to have situational awareness and really understand under Chair Taylor, really what is our charge and what is happening internal, what is happening external, and where do we fit in that picture. And we did some systems mapping then and a lot of interviews, a lot of really trying to understand our context. But I think now we're at a point of resetting. And our goal is to be both practical, looking at how can we contribute to Central Services Campus, to child wellness, to women's health, some things that are key priorities in the space of health and public health in the county and in the subcommittee, but also in our larger committee. But also, how can we not lose sight of the importance of identifying where we have leverage for change at the systems level? And that includes understanding what we're trying to measure so we can understand when we've moved the needle on actually fostering conditions in our community that allow everyone to thrive. And that has been elusive in a lot of the work that we've done. A lot of great work happens, a lot of programmatic work happens. But as a community, it's been challenging to understand how we measure systems change in the context of equity and particularly racial equity. And so our goal is to do that in this group and to begin to understand how we measure that, but how we also adapt to understand how we can practically impact these really important initiatives that we cannot wait on. These are happening now, and so yes, we cannot boil Lake Erie or the ocean, but we also can't put our heads down and work in the weeds and forget that there's a 30,000-foot view of a system and structures that have created the inequity we have now. So how do we do both and? And I think we're well positioned as a committee to think about that, what that looks like, both internal to county government as a partner and external, ensuring that we're bringing the concerns of our community and our respective areas of focus to this committee and having accountability for what we're all trying to do collectively. So this is a bit of a reset, but building on the tremendous work that Chair Taylor took us through for the first many years.
Thank you, Dr. Gullett. And I have to mention that Dr. Gullett has a body of wisdom on work in the health equity space here in this community and health equity research here in this community that is so robust. And so I'm really grateful to be able to leverage that legacy and also move that forward through the body here, but also the work of the subcommittee going forward. So I just want to thank you for that and all that you bring to us in terms of that historical perspective that there has been attention and work that's been going on, and we need to find ways to really network the system so that it knows what it knows and can leverage that knowledge. Thank you. Member Cavanis, Stephen Cavanis is the chair of our Economic Opportunities Subcommittee, and I'll invite you to share a few words if you'd like.
Certainly. And welcome to our new members. So, I mean, I think we're just at a really pivotal point in our work. I mean, I think there was a strong foundation laid under Chair Taylor. I think we're sort of at a point, like a visioning point, an opportunity to sort of focus and sharpen our pencils and not boil the ocean, but to be very direct and intentional about what we can impact now that can ultimately, lay the groundwork, at least for me, for folks that are going to participate in this committee moving forward, and also when there's the next administration, right? It's setting the tone for the future because we know that this work will outlast us. So, I think using the I guess, wellness center, I can't remember what it is called.
Central Services.
Central Services campus as an example, one thing that I'm gonna try to do myself as a best practice is not saying we can't do something, but just throwing out everything that we feel as a group, as a collective, not just the members of this committee, but members of council, administration, and our residents of the county. What do we want to accomplish here? And then we back out, legally what we can and cannot do. But let's just move forward saying, let's try to do the best we can and just think about what we can do and what we think we can do, and we'll figure out, I guess, along the way what actually works.
Thank you very much. With that, I will turn to Mayor Blackwell, who has graciously agreed to chair our Quality of Life Subcommittee, and invite you to please say a few words if you would like.
Thank you and welcome. I think you guys are going to make a huge difference. Looking forward to diversity in thought and your contribution to the. I don't have much to say because I just took this on. I'm stepping in some pretty big shoes, literally, who have been in this seat. Quality of life for me is something I try to achieve every day for the 25,000 residents, almost 200 employees. So I'm excited about what that looks like in a bigger space, but I'm honored to accept it.
Thank you. Member Glenn Shumate can't be here today, but he chairs our Communications Subcommittee, and that subcommittee has continued to gather, think through what work is needed from that subcommittee in service to the community, staying connected, and to this body being interconnected. One of the things that we have been working toward mobilizing is a community survey, and that process has reached a place, thanks to the support of our subcommittee chairs, that we are ready to move the work forward. It needs some additional loving care to make sure that if we engage the community in a survey, it is done so thoughtfully, it is done so respectfully, as we know there have been many efforts to gather information from community members around how racism is impacting their lives or how the problems that racism causes impacts their lives. And so we are wanting to do this in a way that is not repetitive and redundant and not yielding some impact for our community. And we have Dr. Valerie Wright here, who is from CSU and a member of the team that will be leading us in this community survey work. And so I want to turn to you just for a moment, Dr. Wright, and offer you an opportunity to say a few words to the body and share anything you have for us.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure to work primarily with you and Glenn these last several months working towards the project. So thank you for having me. I'm so impressed with all that I hear in the room that is occurring. And so I'm really happy to be a part of this case community survey project. I actually did bring, and clearly I don't think I brought enough copies, but I just wanted to provide a brief flyer to provide an overview of essentially what the project will entail. And so I do like that your chair has stated explicitly that it is at a point where it will need some loving care. And one of the reasons I am here today is hopefully to share what the needs of the project will be and acquire some buy-in and even perhaps time, energy, and effort moving towards getting the community survey done for Cuyahoga County. So essentially, and I'm happy to answer questions. This doesn't just have to be a one-way dialogue. I'm happy to address any questions or concerns. But essentially, we would like to first hold focus groups. All of the subcommittee chairs that have spoken today, we will be focusing essentially on those 4 areas in terms of health and healthcare, economic opportunities, equitable quality of life, and criminal justice in terms of our 4 pillars of focus. And so the goal of those focus groups will be essentially to direct the survey. What exactly do you want to know from your community? How can we be most effective in designing the survey in a way that will answer the questions that we are most interested in seeking? And so those focus groups will really sort of set the stage for the survey that will be then designed based out of that. So once we conduct the focus groups, we will then essentially hold debriefing meetings again to further establish with CASE the direction for the survey that will then be created. And so one of the main things that we will need assistance from this group with will be establishing how to involve our community partners. Where are some spaces and venues that we can hold special events in order to encourage people to complete the survey? Where are some spaces and places where perhaps we can provide incentives to those that we want to come out to complete a survey? And so really tapping into our own networks individually and ensuring that the survey can be administered to a broad, wide range of Cuyahoga County residents.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wright. So you heard the call for aid and assistance in this process, and we will do all we can to leverage the subcommittee work that is, or the gathering of those subcommittees to engage Dr. Wright and the students at CSU, Dr. Dean Anglin, who is also part of this project, so that we wrap our hands and heads around this and hearts around this in a way that honors our intentions. And so thank you for being here and sharing that update. The last few things I want to say are first about the subcommittee chairs are where we're headed next. We're determined to really get together and do some strategy work. And Dr. Gullett has graciously agreed to host a time for us to get together and look at systems mapping as a way of really setting our priorities for this body in service to the priorities the county executive has laid out and also in service to the broader charge of CASE. And so we're going to make time to do that with the goal of getting that time in before this body gathers again so that we can hopefully offer some idea of where the subcommittee chairs are in alignment and in agreement about where we need to head next as a body, and also the role that we would like the CASE members to play, particularly in deepening our understanding around systems mapping and really leveraging that construct and the outputs that it can create. And then I also want to just say that racism is still a public health crisis. But you might run into people in the community who are like, do y'all still meet? Is that still a thing? It is still a thing that we are all still doing. And in service to the community, knowing who we are and what we do, a recommendation of the communications subcommittee that I wholeheartedly support is that each of us find some time to go sit for a headshot with the team here at the county who will put us in the appropriate branding for case. Mayor Blackwell's might say, what now? I'm gonna be the first to do it. Leaders go first, so I will do that, so that our communications team here at the county, led by Jen Chach, can put our faces and bios and passion back in front of the community, so the community knows we are still here. Racism is still a public health crisis, and this is a priority of the current administration. So I ask you to do that.
Send us information in terms of who we need to contact for.
Yes.
Oh.
Come on, I got you, Dr.
Oh,
Marlin.
okay.
You know I got you. I know there's no logic in my life, but I still got you. So I will send that out. Cheryl and I, right, Cheryl? We will coordinate.
So I usually don't look photograph ready, so I have to
Oh.
make sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there are boundaries, okay?
My
But I
boss
understand.
made us get a new one. I was upset. I liked my one from 12 years ago. And I was much younger, but we had it, so I got it.
This is precisely why I don't put my face like this.
All righty, before we do minutes, last thing I wanna just urge, thank you, Clerk Byrd, for the comments on voting. Couple things to just remind ourselves of and the community members who might be tuned in. We must be sure we're registered, and we must check our registration to ensure it's up to date, and that we're still in the system. October 7th is the last day for in-person registration and online, or by mail if your registration is postmarked by October 7th. If you plan on absentee ballot voting, October 9th, your ballot must be received by the Board of Elections. It should be requested, your ballot must be requested by October 29th, and return ballots postmarked by November 4th. Ballots can be returned in person by November 5th, and early voting is starting October 8th and lasts through November 3rd. In-person voting, if you're old-fashioned like me, is November 5th. Let me get that right. I also just want to shout out Cleveland Votes. If we'd had time in this agenda today, we would have invited them to be here with us. Their work in our community to really advance the vote is something that we value and deeply appreciate, and want to see even our community partners and nonprofit entities engage your community members in nonpartisan but determined work to ensure they are also registered to vote and able to participate in this important civic responsibility.
Can I make just a couple piggyback, thank you, comments? One, I just wanted to reflect on what happens in a week at Cuyahoga County is always exciting, you know that, and Ron knows that, we were just out and about. But one of the events I went to last weekend was really meaningful. It's a group called ADA Cleveland. They've been at it for the 8 years of Americans with Disabilities Act, maybe 30 years. But the specifics, why I was reminded in the context of voting, is they held a rally on Public Square that had to do with access, particularly for persons with disabilities. And we can get into a deeper space on this at some point about decisions that get made out of Columbus, and particularly Secretary of State's office, about voter boxes, how present they are in communities. Right now, I think things have winnowed down to one voting box to drop off at one location, which is the BOE. They're claiming, I mean, I think I'm with them, is you want to create as much accessibility points for persons with disability, but all voters and all citizens. But it was a powerful discussion about voting access. There are persons with sight impairments who were on the stage talking. There were persons with behavioral health disorders, and there's issues about can you or can you not have a guardian with you, and there's just a lot in this space. So I wanted to bring that up in the context of voting, but also to think about the future of this growing group, which is great. Thinking about persons with disabilities as members of the board might be something, because there's lots of equity issues we're talking about, whether it's building design or voting access, you know.
Absolutely. The intersection of racial justice and disability justice is real and can certainly explore. Thank you.
You got it. And the only other thing I want to say is, there's been great concerted efforts to get students registered. We want all persons that haven't registered to be registered that are eligible, but I'm impressed with the high school outreach of late at all our area high schools, and there's some stars in the community doing some pretty cool high school registration. Obviously for 18-year-olds, but on issues, a 17-year-old, if they're 18 by the time of the next election, can vote. So more of that.
Thank you.
I know we got some experts around the table.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, so we got to get to our new business really quickly. I want to welcome Councilwoman Condell. Thank you for being here. And with that, we need to approve our minutes from our last meeting. So I need to seek a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. That was Member Cotter. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Rashid. She was not here.
You weren't here. You can't approve the minutes. No, but thank you.
You did, Member Cannon, thank you. All right.
You get to be a lawyer.
Yeah, some of us very much need it. All righty, with that, I'll seek a vote. And all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved.
So I just want to, before I introduce our speakers, I again want to underscore what our chair said and welcome my friends, my colleagues, Councilwoman Meredith Turner and Councilwoman Yvonne Conwell. Councilwoman Conwell and I have been together for 13 since the new form of county government. So I didn't know if you wanted to briefly just say hi. No, okay, we're going to move right on. We're moving on. So thank you for joining us, both of you. So today we're joined by members of the executive staff as well as the county's Department of Public Works, specifically Nicole English, Administrator of Planning and Programs, is who I expect you will hear from. Nicole's going to lead the presentation regarding the Central Services Campus. Nicole, just very briefly, is a registered professional engineer who earned her master's degree in transportation engineering and a Bachelor of Civil Engineering from the University of Dayton. Nicole joined the Cuyahoga County Engineers Office in 2010. In 2011, with the reorganization of county government and the creation of the Department of Public Works, Nicole expanded her role into sanitary, facilities, and airport projects. She leads a diverse staff in project programming for road, bridges, and sanitary and facilities projects. Nicole is repeatedly tapped by the administration to lead extremely complex projects of critical importance for our community. She serves as the county's project manager for the Cuyahoga County Real Estate Portfolio Consolidation Project, the Cuyahoga County Headquarters Project, and the Downtown Cleveland Hilton Project, and is currently managing our Cuyahoga County Central Services Project, which includes the new jail build. Nicole is the past president of WTS Northeast Ohio Chapter and currently serves as its director. She's also active in Transportation YOU program and was awarded the Chapter Member of the Year in 2018. Nicole's a lifelong Clevelander, other than going to Dayton for school. She's a dedicated public servant. She spends time volunteering with Cleveland Municipal School District's True to You mentoring program for 8th grade students. She's a married mother of 2 boys, and like many of us, spent an inordinate amount of time, and I know this personally, watching and cheering on her boys when they participate in multiple sporting activities. It is, as you can see, my pleasure to introduce not only my colleague, but for the past, 13 years, my very dear friend, and most importantly, my friend, Nicole. So, the floor is yours, Nicole.
I told her she could cut that way down, so sorry.
Right. Rewrote it too.
Okay. Are we good to go?
Yes, please. You need, Todd, are we?
So I do think Laurel and I will tag team a little bit.
Yes,
so-
and we met Laurel last time, so
Perfect.
Laurel, my new friend.
And I do want to make a point about the voting that I think everybody around this table will be very excited about. Next week, we are doing a voter registration drive in our jail with our partners from Nova, Ohio. And they will also be, for folks that won't be out by the time Election Day comes around, they'll be requesting absentee ballots for them as well. And I think the Board of Election, I'm looking at Laura because she was helping clarify this yesterday, the Board of Elections will be in there as well, making sure that folks that are eligible have the absentee ballots available.
You said next week?
The voter registration will be next week.
Perfect. So depending on how closely you follow this, some of this may be repeat, so I'll run through it, but feel free to ask any questions, interrupt as you see fit. we have started with some of this presentation that we've taken this out to the communities. We've presented this in Garfield Heights and at County Council. So you may have seen it around, so just indulge me for a few minutes. But the project history, this goes back quite a ways. So I started at the county in 2010. In 2013, after the change of government, we did a facility condition assessment of the entire justice system, the Justice Center block. And really, we came in and understood that the facility was in fairly bad shape in general. And so we needed to get our hands around what we needed to do in the facility and what kind of work would need to get put into that moving forward. So it's been 11 years. It took a while to get where we are, but we're proud that we were finally here. So we've worked on several different pieces of study in the planning document that really looked more at operations in the courts and what is needed moving forward, that sort of highlighted the building assessment that came before it. And then in 2017, we established this Justice Council that worked together to establish our guiding principles as we moved forward on a project. It was clear that something needed to change, and so it was likely going to be some kind of new build or a rehab. And so we had this group that got together that really decided what are our key factors that we need to focus on as we move forward. And then in 2019, we hired the DLR group that did the programming for the entire Justice Center. So they did both the jail and the court side. And so programming really entailed the architects coming together, interviewing all of the stakeholders. They held hundreds of meetings with stakeholders that are in and about the Justice Center on what kind of space would you need in the future, what would be ideal, where are we moving into the future, where do you see trends. They analyzed data to really understand what we were going to need moving forward. So these buildings were built in the 70s and then in the 90s, jail 2. So they were definitely functionally outdated. And so the issues we found in the current jail is just operationally inefficient. In the modern jail, you aren't really seeing, unless you have to in New York City, where they are still building sort of high-rise jails, but that is not ideal in the modern jail. We're sort of stuck with that footprint on our current jail. So in turn, there's also excessive inmate movement. There's nothing really on the housing unit that they can do besides be in the cell. And in the day room, everything else had to get moved around the facility. So to go to rec, to go to medical, to go anywhere, you have to have movement in the facility, which takes staff. And so when you don't have staff, what happens? Nobody is able to move to these places they need to be. And so again, our facility really locked us into this situation. Obviously, the physical condition of the buildings, you can see some of the photos. These aren't even really the worst of the worst. It was in pretty bad shape. So we've done things in the meantime to, I'd say, just spruce it up. You know, there's new paint been done. We've worked on fixtures, but we still are stuck with this structure as it is. And the beds and the units, the way that is arranged, they couldn't exactly classify how they'd always want to classify the inmates, and sometimes they were really just finding where is the empty bed and putting them, and that really wasn't always ideal to where they should be in the entire jail system. But again, stuck with this structure. I talked about the lack of program space, lack of facilities for attorney and family visits, and other programs, just they couldn't happen where the inmates were housed. And then when you started having a lack of staff, then they couldn't even get to the programs if they were held to at a central location. So the building really had us handcuffed into what we could do program-wise too. So what came out of the planning study was recommendations for two different types of work. One was population management and really figuring out, are the people in there the people that need to be in the jail? So did they come in when they didn't need to be? Could we work on diversion? And so there was a diversion center that was opened on East 55th that we've been sponsoring. It isn't quite up to what we want as far as population goes, but it was a start in the right direction on diversion. So keeping people out from even coming in that need to be. Then secondly, working on central booking, which Clerk Bird is working hard to kind of revamp. We built a space in the current jail, not ideal to what we would have in a future jail, but a start of sort of central booking and making sure everybody's at the table when somebody's coming in and making sure they do need to go up into the jail and not be able to go out right from the start. Bail reform, lots of people are working on this in Cleveland, and this has worked fairly well. The Bail Project has set up shop here and have done some good work on bail reform, but that's always something we can continue to work on. Improved information management system, so just the simple fact of having all of the courts and the jail software talk to each other between the cities and the county is key. I mean, we found in the planning study that there was a lot of times when just the length of time it took for the different systems to talk to each other left people in jail longer than they needed to be. And so that is currently the county is working on a contract for a new jail management system that will go into effect in the current building and then carry over into the new building. So that's in process. And then also jail process coordinators, just having someone who's really focused on the data and looking at the day-to-day, who's in the facility, how long have they been here, what's holding it up, and just making sure we're watching to get the people out sooner than they as soon as they can be out. And so every extra day that people are spending in the jail that don't need to be, those are extra beds that we have to build, and just really trying to make sure that we're focused on that. So those are things that were high-level kind of operational items that could happen sooner than later. Then the next big thing was really relocating the jail to a new site. We knew downtown was constricted in how you could build. You would end up with high-rise. We couldn't necessarily do everything you wanted to do. And so looking for a new site for the jail. And so it started with property acquisition, figuring out our funding plan, and then the next steps are the operations and transition, which will still come. We aren't there yet, but we'll show you how we got to the first couple. These were the program objectives early on when we started hiring the architect. I won't read them all to you, but really they're tied to starting what that justice group set out as the guiding principles. We've been carrying those all the way along, so we're still guided by that same work as we get through the architecture and moving into building design. So just the bottom pictures are some precedent imagery, mostly from Franklin County. I think I've grabbed those, but just really looking at, compared to those couple you saw from our current jail, how different the look is. I mean, I think one of the things we've really been noticing as we toured jails was the use of light. I mean, if you go in our county jail, it's dark, it's dingy. With every new facility we've gone to, I mean, really that bringing in natural light, air, I mean, those are just a whole different way of designing a jail. And so you'll see that kind of carried throughout a lot of this imagery. Anything you want to say on that program, Jeff? You're good, okay.
Just a question about the supervisory mode. The facility shall be planned to operate on a full direct supervision mode.
Yep.
Are we talking about what we saw in Franklin?
Yes,
and how they-
correct. So that literally means that there will be a corrections officer in every housing pod, and so they are physically in there and directly supervising, opposed to part of our jail, which is indirect supervision, where someone is more watching cameras and that as the housing unit is, carrying on. So this allows, really, this is the modern practice of most jails that we've talked to in really creating a relationship with the CO and the inmates so that they are in the facility. It's not kind of just that you lock them up and throw the key away and then just kind of watch from afar. This is really being in the housing pod, making sure everybody has what they need, and then bringing all the services to the housing unit so that corrections officer makes sure that everybody has the access to video visitation, because that's on their housing unit, can go into the rec room because that's open all the time. They're making sure that their whole day is functioning as it should. So the location, this was pretty well covered in all sorts of media, but if you aren't familiar with where we're going, it is in Garfield Heights. We searched high and low the county, all over. We started with real estate consultants and really I think we had over 150 locations at one point. We've whittled it down. There was certain requirements we had to have related to acreage and how big it needed to be and where it was located. And so it started going down from hundreds to, I think we got to about 40 to about 20. And then there was a handful of sites that were kind of left in our last round. And then we also issued an RFP to be sure that everybody who had a chance, that if you had land out there you wanted to propose to us, could come in. And this site actually came through the RFP process from the owner of the land. And it really hit all of the key buttons. So when County Executive Ronayne came in, I think this was one of the first actions that we started looking through. What are these jail sites that are left? And this really rose to the top for everybody in just the sense that it was centrally located in the county. It is the ease of acquisition. It was one owner. It was a couple different parcels, but one owner. So we were able to negotiate with one person, whereas some of our other sites had several owners that if we ended up where a couple didn't want to sell to us and we had to end up through eminent domain, could take years and years to settle. Environmentally clean. some people, when you mention this site, they'll say, oh, the landfill. This is not the landfill site that was south of 480. This is actually a clean site that had been cleared at one point in time for some development. You might remember IKEA was talked about going here. And so there was some houses years and years ago that were on the site, but this was not the landfill site. We actually hit rock pretty quick when we go down, which is going to help us on some of the geotech on the project. But it was big enough, 72 acres is what we bought, and so it allows for low-rise construction, which again gets you to more spread out. You're not having the dependency on elevators and movement throughout the facility, so making sure that it's good for not just the inmates, but we have been looking a lot into the building about what this means for our employees, because they're spending most of their lives here too. And so making sure that it's easy for them to work in the facility and have access to light and air as they work all day long too. Free parking, this is one of the biggest problems. I also happen to have parking services under me. But if you ever have a problem in Huntington Park, don't call me about the garage. This is we know how many calls we get about parking and just the access to parking, and we don't have enough, and people trying to come to the Justice Center and lawyers and families to visit and coming to court. Parking downtown is really hard for people and having to pay the prices that are charged if there's a Browns game going on or other things. So this free parking was really important for both our visitors to the facility and the employees. This is a huge perk for employees when we get out here. Connected to public transportation, we've been working with RTA about their bus line that comes down Transportation Boulevard, and both, again, for employees and for reentry, that there is access to a bus that heads downtown and out. Allowing for complementary uses, just again, giving us a little bit more land, that if there is other uses that would make sense to be here on this campus, that we have some room to do that. So where it makes sense, we're looking at that. The expedited schedule, because of the no environmental concerns and not having to do remediation on the site, we were able to essentially buy it. There was a lot of work done on utilities and looking at what's underground, but there is no environmental clearing that we have to do, cleanup that we have to do that could have taken a couple years to do. And then just, again, employee benefits related to everything that really comes with this site. So the uses going on the site, again, are the detention center, the jail, essentially, the sheriff's administration, so we're moving most of the sheriff's operations. He'll still have some presence downtown as far as his protective services officers that manage the courts, but his main function will also be out here. And then support services and shared services opportunities. Again, just a little bit of precedent imagery on what outside of the facility could look like. I know we took this out to the community just in the sense that when you say jail, most of people in the community think of barbed wire, and that's the only thing in their heads. And so we really wanted to show them these are actual jails that have been built in the last 5 to 7 years. And Franklin County's is kind of the back side of it, so it's not even looking, their front is even much nicer than that. So most of them are the entry pieces and the sheriff's offices. And so this is kind of what we envision too, and what we've been starting to see from our architects is really looking at buildings that the community is actually happy to have in their community. And as people drive by and see them, maybe would think it's an office building or a medical facility, not making it look like a barbed wire fence around a kind of, cement building only. And so we're really taking this to heart as to what it could look like as we move forward and making the community be actually proud of it being in their community too. And then moving to the inside, I showed a couple of these pictures earlier, just looking at kind of an entry point, the medical clinic, making things more normal. I think to even Chris's point about the normalcy unit that we saw at Grafton, really creating things that are like what they see on the outside, people see on the outside. It calms your nerves, it makes you feel more comfortable, you're not as anxious, and it really just creates a better environment for both the folks in the jail and the workers that we have there too. And so creating the medical facility that looks like a medical clinic that you might have seen on the outside, right? And making sure we have the safety features that we need, but then what can we do to make things a little more normal? Looking at material. So again, if you've been in a jail or our jail, it's really loud, right? There's not carpet because you want to make sure you can keep it clean, but what can we put? There's new products now that aren't quite carpet but feel like carpet and are acoustically absorbing, because that noise is just, that in itself, makes you a little bit anxious during the day. So looking at all these little pieces that we can do to kind of make things better. And light, Again, the fact that if you can't see outside all day long and you don't know what time it is. We went to one of the visits of the jail and they said just putting a clock in the unit, as simple as you think that is, so somebody knows what time of day it is. That they don't, that's just something you don't think about in reality, when you're going about your day. But that's a big feature, especially if they didn't have light. Now they'll have light and a clock to be able to see what time it is. So this is kind of the boring stuff, but my engineer in me needs to show you is the initial project work. Some people have said to us, boy, you bought the land, how many, a year ago, what have you been doing? I haven't seen much. We've been doing a lot of work, but mostly behind the scenes. So we had to consolidate the parcel, looking at surveys. These are all utilities that were on the site because they were planning to develop it. Some of these utilities got put in, so we just need to understand where they are and understanding where the sewers go. And then did several tours of jails around, really learning about best practices in both design, building, and operations. So some of our visits we went to weren't even so much to see what the building looks like, but more to talk to them about how they're doing things and what they're doing. We went to Texas, a group of us, to Houston and San Antonio, and they're just doing huge things on crisis intervention and diversion, and their facilities were older. It wasn't that they had built them that new, but the operations and how they were running was just really impressive. So we've been doing a lot of that work as well.
So another big piece of the work that we've been doing is trying to go to and speak with the community, especially those with lived experience, to try to understand what are the things that our community wants to see in our jail. And similar to what Executive Renee talked about in the beginning with the Grafton prison, we've really been trying to frame our approach with the community and with this project in three buckets. One, we want to keep people out that don't need to be in the facility, whether that's through diversion, through court programs, through a central booking process. What are the programs and opportunities that we have to make the jail smaller, because there are folks in there today that don't need to be in there. Two, how can we enhance the programming that's happening in the facility? So not just the required programming like medical, psychiatric, substance use disorder, but also vocational education, vocational training, education, other types of programs that we can do that can make the experience more humane and rehabilitative for folks, so that when they come out, they might be in a better position to not come back into the facility. And then finally, the reentry piece. So what are the things that people need as they leave the facility to make sure, again, that they don't return? Is that housing? A big intersection that we found between folks that are involved in the justice system and the community is that people need probably almost as much as like mental health and substance use disorder, they need housing and stable places to live. So, kind of with that framework, we went to the community over the past 4 months or 5 months now and talked to them about what are the things that you would want to see in this facility with those kind of three buckets of need. So we'd hosted listening sessions at Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry, Edwin's, Recovery Resources, with Ronnie at Towards Employment. And in particular, the Jail Coalition has been a really interesting and great group to engage in as well, because they are, it's a group of grassroots people that we're very focused on, not wanting a jail in the community, but we have been able to really build a trusting relationship with them and come to a place where we're like, okay, this is happening, so how can we do this better? And so we have somewhat regular meetings, about once a month we've been meeting with them and trying to really engage with them and trying to, look at this through a different lens. We've also engaged with additional stakeholders that are listed here, including Colleen. And that has been really helpful to, again, gain perspective of, even though these are folks that maybe aren't, don't have the lived experience perspective, they definitely have an interaction with the system and have a lot of, very valid thoughts about how we can do this better. Basically have learned that there's a general consensus that we're headed in the right direction with vision and program offerings. Those three themes of diversion, enhanced programming, and reentry really resonate with people. They want to see the programs in the current jail expand, and so that's something that I'm working very closely with the sheriff and the chief of corrections on right now. What are the things that we can do over the next 3 to 5 years so that we're not waiting for this new facility to open, that we can start to make an impact now in people's lives? And so we're excited. Our Office of Reentry is going to be going in there in the next few weeks to start to offer reentry programming. And then we're going to Executive Renee's point, we're going to start to model and pilot this idea of a normalcy unit in our current facility. So
like he was saying, you even within a current facility, there are things that we can do better. And so we are working together. We're very grateful to have a committed sheriff and interim chief of corrections right now that are on the same page with us. So really excited about some of the things that we're going to be working on. Also, there's just this idea of the focus on restorative justice, which is a big, broad kind of goal, and I think that we need to dig more into that and see what that looks like, but that's probably, bringing in best practices from other communities and really understanding what that means and how we can overlay that onto our system. And then also just a desire to see an overall system strategy for crisis behavioral health care in the community, substance use disorder interventions as well, because about 40% of the people that are in the jail today have some diagnosis of severe persistent mental illness or substance use disorder. So we know there's a vast intersection between these two systems. So some of the programs that we're going to be offering, we have listed up here. Some of them are required by the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, but there are enhanced programs that we want to do. So obviously medication distribution and food and beverage are something that we would have to offer, but we want to do food and beverage stations in the housing unit, which is not something that's available right now. We want to make sure that the day room is open and welcoming and creates more of a community type setting so that people feel comfortable sitting out in the space, interacting with each other, and having more just interaction with folks. As Nicole mentioned, we will have video conferencing on the housing units, which is not available right now. So those will be opportunities for them to meet with their lawyers, potentially do video court. Maybe the video court will not be, in the day room, but there will be a room likely off the housing unit where they will be able to participate in video court, right there. We will have multi-purpose rooms available where we can do some of the programming that we've talked about. And again, to the point of not having to move people, it will be easier for staff to allow these types of things to happen because it won't be as cumbersome to shift people around the facility. In addition, every housing unit will have an outdoor, did you talk about that in the pressure report, Rick?
Kind of.
Yeah, so every housing unit will have a rec room attached that will have windows and light and air available, windows that open. So that is very different from what we have right now. And so we are really excited about that piece because that opportunity to have some, sun on your face, to breathe fresh air is so important for people's mental health. In addition, we will have an outdoor exercise yard similar to what you might see at a prison. Not necessarily with barbed wire around it, but an opportunity for people that might be there for an extended period of time to actually go outside and do, maybe not play basketball.
There's a debate about that.
Yeah, but participate in sports, be on a walking trail, maybe have a community garden, so those types of things as well. In addition, the resident programs will include hair care, social work and case management, reentry programming, vocational education types of programs, working with community partners like towards employment potentially to offer some of those services on site, and of course chapel services and some volunteer programs. In our medical area, one of the big differences from what we offer right now to what we will offer is that we're going to have kind of infirmary level care, which means that we will be able to take care of a little bit more complex patients on site at the facility. So folks that right now might need to go to a nursing home or a skilled nursing facility or might need to stay in the hospital longer, we are going to have a unit that they can be cared for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week within the confines of this facility, which helps us reduce the number of security detail that we have to use at the hospitals right now or out at nursing home facilities. Many of the things that are listed there are really, requirements that one would have to provide. Physical therapy and radiology, ultrasound are things that are nice to have, but we definitely want to have them on site. The amount of people that need physical therapy because they have had a traumatic injury before coming in is pretty profound. And so being able to bring, those types of services on site, again, reduces the need to transport and allows us to provide the care that they need right there. And then for staff, we are in the process of planning of having a dining room and a cafeteria, maintenance shop, sheriff's garage, and locker rooms and fitness center. And probably have some walking trails and some interaction for the staff on the outside with nature as well, because as Nicole mentioned, it's very hard. I worked in the jail for 5 years, and it is a very challenging facility to be in if you don't have an opportunity to get out, breathe fresh air, take a break from the environment. So I personally am so excited for the staff to have these opportunities, because I think it will help us both recruit and retain staff.
So we've been working, again, since we kind of got the land started and our architect team on board. And so most of what we've been doing over the last couple months are schematic design workshops. And so these are just a sample of the subjects that we have. So essentially, we've divided some groups up into each of these subjects, and then every 2 weeks, our consultant team comes into town, and we go from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock for a couple days in a row, and really just work through all the details of these different topics. And so you can read them, but essentially, it's just saying that the work being done is a lot and pretty expansive. And so we've tapped into different resources, our internal resources and experts on all these topics, but even some external resources to really help guide us on these different topics. And so some of you might have been consulted, or someone who's been consulted, or will be in the future, but we are looking at kind of all these little areas. And so this is where we take the plan that started on a spreadsheet as a program and then really gets on paper to more box diagrams that then will eventually be floor plans and plans that we can build on the building. So these are really driving the entire design process. And so we have a pretty diverse core team that includes folks on the public works side, Laurel and her team, and the sheriff's side, their team, and then we kind of expand as we go for each of these different categories. So sometimes we'll be in this room and there might be 10 of us, and then other times there's 25 of us, depending on the topic. And so these have been really important, and it's kind of the way the architect, gets to the final design, and it's iterative in process, and sometimes it feels a little exhausting and trying, but every time they come back every 2 weeks, we really see that progress moving. And so we're starting to just now get actual items on paper that we can see and are a little kind of meaningful. And so that was very fresh as they were here last week, actually, doing some of that.
Nicole, are those different topics scheduled for different dates?
Correct. And different pieces of the days, so.
You done the visitation and the video?
We had the very first one last week, which was high level and had lots of people and lots of opinions. And so that one was kind of like a throw everything on the wall, and then it'll be back. They're kind of rotating every 4 weeks, that they come in every 2 weeks, but that topic will be back 4 weeks later. So that one's probably out another 3 weeks before it'll come back again.
And I was just wondering, for the Justice Committee here on CASE, could they look and study some of those things? Because I think from some of my colleagues, that's a problem that some of us disagree with, is how we're gonna, how the movement is veering toward visitation being video versus the kids coming in. I think that was
Right, and
something
we've
that-
been working really closely on in-person visitation, and that's a goal of the county
Yeah, I share
executives.
that too. We, just before you got here, was talking about our Grafton visit on Friday, which you were at, Councilwoman. I feel like the very first thing we saw was family reunification going on site, and we just want to strive to hit that goal.
That goes with our DP.
Yeah, important. And that, I'm on more of the public works building side, although I've learned a lot about operations, and I keep saying to Laurel and the team that we can build everything we want to build. It's about once we open in the operations and making sure that we know what we need to do in the future on operations side too. And so we can build the building, but it's gonna be that we need to keep on going and what we do with operations as we go forward.
We also hope that the employees that will move over eventually into a nice workspace and different programming and different environment will overtime costs. because
For
they
sure.
Wanna go to work.
Yes, the facility is supposed to be more, operationally, the direct supervision in itself is more operationally efficient too.
Can you talk a little bit more about who's engaged in these schematic design workshops? Laurel talked about focus groups facilitated by different organizations. Are any of those folks involved in any of this?
So the most of the work that we've done so far has really been about like physical kind of layout had a lot of our internal staff there. The one that we did have more folks that were outside was the video visitation and the video court and and the other one.
Video court and visitation.
The other big piece is we've had the Metro Health team who's been running the medical program for the past 5 years at all of the medical related sessions as well to help guide on that. You know, the programming ones such as like the horticulture and the haircut, that's really been more like outreach, talking to people, what do you think would work, and then bringing those ideas back.
Some of it is just about creating the space to allow it to happen. And again, that's what the building design is gonna have. Like, we want to address this, so let's create a location. And then once we know where the location is, then bringing more partners in to identify how it's fitted out and how it's operated and who gets involved in that. So right now, it's kind of about the blocking and stacking of, you know, where do the actual rooms go? Where is the kitchen? Where is, you know, that kind of thing at a high level. But we want to make sure that we've got all the right pieces, find a home, you know, within the facility that we want to address in the future.
She actually had a question that I asked, and it's so funny that she walked in. I invited a friend who I serve on the board of care, and I was thinking of the chapel, which I'm assuming is more multi-faith. But I think about how, for example, I volunteered a lot, and I'm on the board where care is actually the main contact for the county jail to provide religious scriptures and all the inmates who proclaim Islam as their faith, all the material, and it's oftentimes on an annual basis, they get thousands of letters from county inmates asking for requests. On a monthly basis, I think they're sending over 50 packages to county inmates. So I think about, like, when you think about external partners, how you make it also like equitable religiously and religious freedoms and protecting that, right? So I think about some of these programs, when it comes to like the chapel, how expansive have you gone out yet, or if you're still planning to go out farther?
Yeah, we have not talked about chapel services yet, but I believe, my understanding is that there's an imam that's gonna be hired by.
Yeah, I mean, you're singing our song. By the way, your friend, for everybody, want an introduction?
Oh, this is Fatin Oda. She's the Executive Director of CARE Cleveland, Northern Ohio chapter. CARE is Council on American Islamic Relations. I actually heard about the news about the imam from a social media post they posted, so it's really great.
Good progress, but we have more to do. When I was coming into office, I got a call probably in the transition period, and there was, you know, an argument that was being made that was very monolithic, the way religious services and facilities were being held at the jail, if you will, and the persons who were coming through, and there wasn't enough diversity and religious diversity. So one, it is a priority of ours, and we also, at our new Cuyahoga Welcome Center, have prioritized this, and but we could, I think, continue to use ongoing counsel on this. So this goes right to, Chair, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I'm hoping that this particular committee advises on an ongoing basis on what we're doing with the Central Services Campus, because you just raised one of my hot button issues, so. Yeah.
Especially too for the staff and the individuals who'll be at the facility to make sure they're also represented too.
Exactly, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for the work on this meeting. It's amazing that we're having this meeting. You know, I wish that we could do away with jails and prisons altogether, and, you know, wish we would stop making more and solve the other problems that cause us to have these jails. But as Malak was saying, I mean, we receive probably thousands of letters, and this is across Ohio, but we do a lot of work with Cuyahoga County Jail. And a lot of the incarcerated community members are, you know, for a long time have been hoping for an imam, and so I'm so glad that that position has opened, a paid position, because a lot of times our people were expected to volunteer their time while other religious faith leaders were paid to do the same job for their communities. So this is great progress. But I'm interested to learn more on how we can help in that realm, and interested to hear more about what's going on.
Well, one of the things I think we can just take back just from the feedback right now on the floor is to our design team, you know, and talk about the things that they may be in their blinders, you know, and so keeping ongoing counsel, and I think probably some interfaith counsel from
Yes.
the community would be helpful in all this, so starts here, but I think we can fan out. Yeah.
Thank you. So first and foremost, I want to give a huge kudos to Exec Renee for something you said earlier, and I wrote it down. You said campus of purpose. It really resonated with me, and that can be like a growing theme for this here, like a campus of purpose. But I got 2 points, 3 actually. Is there any conversations about, say, court etiquette that's being provided for individuals? Because oftentimes what happens is when a person go to court, pull up your pants, take off your hat, sit up straight, right? And there's so much going on in that element, like they feel like they're being talked down to, so to speak. So is there any conversation, I think it's under that bucket of the decentralized programming that can be provided ahead of time before a person even go to court, like video that they can see. How do you address the magistrate, right? I'm sure this will be good news for you. So I'm thinking that'd be something. The food distribution, I don't know if there's any conversation on how meals will be prepared, because oftentimes those are things that inmates struggle with when the meals come up. It's either cold, so I wonder what that conversation is about. Third, is there any conversation with the city of Garfield? And maybe I'm kind of like getting out my element, because now you're bringing another facility into that neighborhood. And I had to go to Garfield because I had to file an eviction like last week. So I saw their building's kind of like dilapidated also. Any possibility of, consulting them to say, hey, can we merge, so to speak?
We did not pay him to say that, Councilman.
I'm also a resident of Garfield also, so I know that whole situation about bringing another prison to the neighborhood. Maybe I'm getting.
No, I keep going with your list, but I'm gonna jump with that last one.
And then also, I know you had on there about laundry services. Is the laundry service just for like the facility? Reason why I asked that question, because oftentimes people that go into prison, when they're going to the jail, they're going in there from a traumatic experience that took place. Either they got slammed down on the ground, they got grass on it, and then when they're released, guess what? They're giving back those same clothes. So is the idea about having a laundry for the facility or for the people to the point where you got a service that wash their clothes, so when they leave, they're actually walking away with a fresh start, so to speak?
Who addresses what first?
We'll let you handle golf.
Yeah, you can.
Since you all.
Go ahead.
Do the other ones, or?
Yeah, I'll come back to
Or
Garfield.
you can add to.
Yeah.
What. I think the court etiquette is an excellent idea, and I think that maybe some of maybe it was your group that offered the life skills training. There was another agency that we talked to that could potentially do life skills. But I think incorporating that into the programming is an excellent idea. And so we'll definitely put that on the list to discuss. The food service will be likely delivered similar to how it is now, but we will have new carts, in 5 years, who knows what the technology will be, even to keep it warm. But it's funny because as we talked food service, we've talked a lot, like it's very similar to a hospital, and making sure that the meals, get there hot and that they get there well and timely. And so the way that the facility will be built, and with like a central kind of elevator that goes down to the kitchen, where now the kitchen is located over in jail 2. So if you're sitting at the top of jail 1, the 10th floor, your meal may be cold by the time it gets there. But the design is very intentionally built to get food to folks and get it to them hot. We talked about in some units potentially having microwaves and different types of things too, so that people can heat things up, whether it's off of commissary or their own meal as well. And your laundry idea that's a great idea. I'm putting it on the list to talk about, because that's so true. Like the property room, nobody wants to walk into the property room. So I love that.
Yeah, just to piggyback, without taking too much time, I think I just want to keep going back to the diversity of our religious offerings. That's something we'll just keep bird dogging and maybe keep this group up to speed with that, but maybe work together on it. Onto Ronnie's points, we saw, this is where, just seeing is understanding, and hats off again to Councilpersons Turner and Kamal, because they've been with us on site visits. What we saw is what you just described by lived experience. The bags, I mean, literally to the point down, I think it was was Davidson County, where, you know, you go in and there's a fair warning that doesn't even smell good. So why couldn't things be washed on entry, right? I mean, that just as a standard operating procedure. On the laundry and meal prep, one, credit to you, have eaten the food. Tasted the food. I mean, there's a story on it was appropriate because you really got proximate. We would like to think, you know, out of the box on things on meals and laundry. One, discussion about how much could actually be done under the roof in-house by an actual county employee, but two, how can work co-ops happen? You know, there's some limited stuff like that happens now, but how can you really make it an integrated part of the system? We saw Franklin County definitely driving toward that model. So the co-op opportunities. Garfield's complicated, but just want to say, just for everybody's edification, the campus, we have had at least a first cut at the idea of a co-located police facility and court on site. The court serves 9 other communities, so that the idea was sort of a regional effort to do this. But I'm learning as I go too. You know, my goal, what I saw in Davidson, was the idea of night court, because the idea is that people get moved through rain and faster, so they're not away from their families as long. We're hearing that some of that might be solved more through just video conference court, you know, but we want to keep our minds open to it. Cost is an object, you know, there's no question about that, and that's obviously we're speaking with council members about this. We'll be speaking more about it, but the idea of co-location just for overall regional collaboration efficiencies and cost containment, kind of why we're having these conversations. So thanks for bringing it up.
I'm gonna go back to the direct supervision role, because it's really interesting. And as, you know, in the 5 years down the line, transitioning your COs into that environment, like how do you, because there's limitations right now, right? So how do you, I guess, do the best to make that a seamless shift? Because that seems kind of difficult to, without like simulating it.
So many of the units actually are direct supervision now in the jail. The jail 2 is almost entirely direct supervision, and jail 1 has some that might be shared. There are times maybe where it's not direct supervision, but most of the units do have a CO in them at almost at all times. I think the other thing though, I think the point that you're getting to is like culture change and trying to, you know, shift the culture even before we move there, because you can just pick up a bad culture and move it into a new building. And so that's something that we've been really talking about very, very closely with the sheriff and the chief of corrections, and even, you know, bringing up Grafton again, we talked about like, let's bring some of our leaders to Grafton and maybe have them spend a few weeks there and like and learn, you know, what it is to be in a different culture and to be in a respectful space with your, you know, with your residents. So just really kind of trying to think outside the box. I read an article about a jail in Pennsylvania that took 25 of their staff to Norway. I'm not saying we're going to do that, but that idea, because we have this great, but we have this great, you know, model here in our community. So why not take advantage of that and, you know, and really learn from folks here.
And just to piggyback, we've talked to most of the jails we visited that open new. We've asked that same question. How did you see your staff transition? And they said, actually, the COs themselves, it worked pretty well. They said that the next line of management is where a lot of these jails saw trouble. And so really focusing on the management style and getting them to maybe visit some of these sites, bringing some people in to explain to them how it changes. They said the management had the harder transition. So we're learning, again, sort of to these best practices, just trying to learn how have you transitioned your jail over? How did it work on that transition plan? And so making sure that we kind of listen to what other people have learned as they went.
Yeah, Laurel, just to kind of dovetail into the medical discussions, I would actually welcome an opportunity to be part of the Metro team, you know, with what you're working with. I mean, I see things through more of a health equity lens, you know, as you do. You mentioned something about digital radiology. Are there plans to incorporate a CT scan machine?
Oh, no.
No?
That would be far too expensive. I mean,
So,
we have an X-ray on site right now, but I believe it's over 20 years old, so, you know, having,
The updated.
yeah, having an updated X-ray.
Telemedicine, is that part of it?
So there is telemedicine right now.
Okay.
I think that there's definitely opportunity to expand it if we had the space. So right now it is in a shared exam room with, you know, that a doctor has to use on certain days. And so that's part of what we're, you know, building into the clinical area, that we, you know, that we have those spaces, and even that some of the rooms off of the housing units will have that video capability. So whether, you know, you might be doing a visit with your dermatologist, or you might be, you know, visiting with your lawyer, that room will have flexibility to do, you know, to do both of those things.
And also, this is an opportunity for us, and again, it's a budgetary issue, I'm sure. Preventative care versus just sick care.
Mhm.
Where are we there?
So right now, there is a 5-day-a-week chronic care provider that's on site, as well as there's a family practice team, women's health team that comes in. I think that the team was trying to move more away from like emergency urgent care type of medicine to family practice, to bring in family practice or internal medicine providers on. And I think that's, you know, that's a work in progress, but even just having the 5-day-a-week chronic care provider has been huge in terms of identifying and helping people like control and even identify that they have diabetes, but helping them to control it as
Do
well.
the inmates have access to the full Metro Health pharmacy formulary? And one other thing, and you know this better than anybody, that's a very high-stress situation for healthcare providers. You were there for 5 years. With the county executive here, I'll throw it out there. Is there any way that we can create some additional incentives to recruit more nurses, retain more nurses, other caregivers?
Why not? I mean, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because I think that at a certain point, you just can't pay people enough to just, you have to create the culture and the space that people want to work in there.
Yep.
And there are people that love this type of work. They're very passionate, they're driven from the heart. You know, it's a social justice kind of, similar to the folks that worked at Neighborhood Family Practice. There are people that are passionate about this work, so finding those folks and making sure that it's the right fit and that they understand. I think that's the bigger challenge, is like, I think some people look, oh, well, maybe I'll get paid more to work in the jail. Well, yeah, you might get paid more than, you know, working at a nursing home, but you have to really want to be there, and you have to understand what it is that you're walking into.
So are the caregivers limited to being Metro Health caregivers, or
Yeah,
one opportunity would be to open it up to additional, even non-Metro Health caregivers who have that same passion? Because you're gonna be able to find more caregivers to serve, you know, these you know, inmates. So, I mean, that's something
Yeah,
that should be considered.
I was thinking, I've been impressed with what workforce development is doing in terms of, you know, sort of sourcing gaps in employment needs, and they've been very specifically lately working with behavioral health as a workforce development objective. I'm meeting with the director tomorrow, actually, and can bring this up on this sort of area-specific nursing that's specific to our corrections facilities. I think it's a great idea. And I mean, again, you're more expert than I am, but my observation is what you said just about wanting to be in a place and work in a place where there's a culture that cares. And I mean, we can connect those dots.
I mean, there may be nurses from UH, the clinic,
Right,
other,
exactly.
that would be willing to
Absolutely.
step in as well. Right.
Absolutely.
I know we have right now a contract with Metro.
We have one, but
So
you know,
we have to overcome
that's a great point, Councilwoman. But the way, I mean, I've been hoping to utilize this new advance of, like I said at the beginning of this meeting, I don't wake up wanting to build a jail. I want to build a better system of justice. So every opportunity we have to prompt a new way of contracting, a new way of thinking, a new way of, you know, working. To us, it's an opportunity to have that conversation about flexing out contracts like that. So.
Well, and there's ways that, you know, the staff could work PR, they could work as needed. You know, a Cleveland Clinic nurse, if they wanted to work in the jail, could be a as-needed nurse at Metro too. So that is something that happens a lot across systems.
Yeah.
You know, it's getting late, so I'll be brief. I have three questions. I'm gonna say that and you can answer them in your own way. I'm looking at timeline because I'm just over the border. The local employment, that's one of the concerns. People are concerned about the timeline in Maple Heights. Really haven't had the discussion. I've been very respectful of my colleague just across the border from me. What does it mean for local employment for people in that area? Just Garfield Heights, but the area, what does that mean? Because that addresses concerns and creates buy-in and people more receptive when they know what it means for them. They're worried about additional traffic. Is there gonna be danger? So those things, so I'm sure there's that communications can kind of work in concert with what we do here. There's gonna be some communication with the people that are gonna be most affected. And those are the communities that are very close to Garfield Heights and the leaders in that area. And then, local jails. 3 years, 5 years down the road, when this is successful, we're gonna be optimistic. Do I need to really maintain a jail 3 miles away? Because I have to pay a medical doctor at my jail. I provide meals. I provide maternity care. I mean, I provide everything at this little bitty jail on Lee Road that I just hired my third corrections officer, because there's been a turnover. I have all of these expenses that's on my budget, but yet 7 miles away, you're building something amazing. I would just hope that as this idea grows, this campus grows, you achieve successes, you measure success, you look forward, that these small jails where we have the exact same expenses, in the spirit of regionalization, without calling it regionalization, because people get nervous about that the jails in the individual communities go away. Because I'm not gonna be able to offer what you're offering. It's horrible in there. I'm not gonna be able to offer windows and new furniture, and this thing was built probably in 1950.
Yep.
So I just hope, I'm just asking to put it on the table, the communities that have jails, that have these expenses, have them go away, and have them too have a better experience for the times there. And that, sometimes it comes out of my mayor's court, sometimes it comes out of the municipal court, of course, which I share with Garfield as well. There are other communities. I think, looking forward, think about those jails. I'd love to hear about local employment. What does it mean for Maple Heights, the people that could possibly work there? What are the positions that are gonna be opening? And then timeline.
And just quick, because I know we're moving, but it's good to have our HR team here today. Working with the sheriff's department on job opportunities, job fairs, job notifications, I think would be terrific as a local benefit to what we're doing here. You raise, in a different way, the same conversation Ronnie brought up. I mean, we want to be a regional source for taking some of that overhead expense that mayors need not absorb in, and as our architects have said, there's an economy of scale with, same sort of staffing, same, there's just a lot of efficiency that can be gained. So I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I just want to say message heard, and as I said at the outset, our county council conversations are important too. So
Can I just ask a question of the mayor, Mayor Blackwell? That proposal should move forward with various cities being a regional approach for the jail. Would that be some financial contribution that you would also finance? The legislators had on, would that you still be able to give, maybe not your whole budget where we would say, but if we've done those kind of things in the past with Euclid and Bedford, where there was a contract worked out that you would actually, for the people that go through your system, would be housed at ours, but there would be some financial help.
I think that can be achieved. It makes more sense. It just doesn't make sense to have those residents down the street in something nice and humane, and then I have them in this jail across the street. I mean, it's fine, and it's horrible. It just, something's not right about it.
No, you're right.
Yeah. Especially as they age in the buildings, that then you're really faced with even higher expenses related to that. Timeline, I don't know if I've pulled some of these slides out, but we did have a slide when we went to Garfield Heights and did the community meeting on local employment, and we did talk about average salaries of the positions that would be in this facility and how many. And we also thought of it in two ways, being able to attract employees and have job fairs on site and coming, but then also housing in your communities around, because people tend to want to live close to where they work. And so we looked at kind of vacant lots and even talked to Garfield Heights about programs that they could have on, creating incentives for, people who work on the facility to be able to buy a house in your community. So I think it's kind of both ways, working and living in the communities that are surrounding this too. And then timeline, our target is, I keep saying like early '28 is the hope for when we open. It's just a matter of, does that open right away? Is there some time getting
That
in?
means I gotta win again.
We can help you with that. So yeah, that is the timeline that we're looking at.
Win.
But,
I'll just be finishing up this term, okay.
and then traffic and danger, just real quick on traffic, they had done traffic studies on the site when they were looking to make it a development like IKEA, and so they had started, the developer actually made improvements along transportation and at the interchange, and we have studied that our traffic will be less than that at the peak time, so we feel very confident that the roads are ready for even our site. So the roads, I think we should be in good shape. And then just thoughts on danger. We heard at the community meetings just about mostly reentry focused, that when you let people out, what happens, where do they go? And so we're really focused on what does that reentry look like? Who is there? Where are they going? Are we making sure that, like Laurel said, if they don't have somewhere to go, what are we, we're not just opening the door and saying goodbye. We're putting people in contact with the right
May I
places.
make a request? The next time you have that meeting, can you invite the city of Maple Heights?
Absolutely. I mean,
Sure.
as, I was glad Nicole used the word communities because we know you and Mayor Burke do well together. We should have a regional meeting. Yeah,
Yep.
we will.
And then, I know you had one more question. I just have a couple more slides I want to run through really quick, if we could get the slides back up, just to show you on the building side that actually it's a design, I won't go through this but it's a design build process. So it's not your typical, you put a bid out and the contractor submits and you have goals set. The design builder actually will have subcontractors, but then they will also have packages that they sell. And so they're doing a huge job related to diverse-owned business goals and also workforce goals that have been established and how they track them. They actually held a, what would you call
It was a community outreach or community resource
fair
event,
a couple weeks ago that Councilwoman Turner and Laurel had attended with Gilbane, because they're also doing the Lake County Jail and they're doing some Shaker Schools work. And so they have a whole process where they are trying to look for diverse contractors and getting people in mentorship programs. And there's so much work out here right now for the contractors that they are into apprentice programs and mentoring small businesses. And so just putting that out there, I want this group to be aware of kind of what the work they're doing. And if you have any ideas related to that, we are happy to take those back to our team too. I know Glenn Shoemate's very involved in some of that work. So working with him, we've already had some conversations, and with our DEI department that is in contact. So just knowing this is kind of these were some slides that I got from Gilbane and their team, just again, working through project outreach and also workforce outreach in the community. So back to your job opportunities, there is things that could start today on the side of the contracting side and getting people in, even if they're interested and they just start learning now and they work on this project and now they've got a job to go to the next project. So maybe it starts in your community or close to home, but then it continues as a career as they go forward. So happy to get some of this information out to local communities too and working on
I think they have a vendor's fair coming up, don't they?
Yes. Yeah, the DEI vendor fair. And here was the next steps, just your timeline, so right to your point too.
Okay.
So I just want to get through those couple with the contractor because we had gotten those and I thought this group might be of interest, but happy to take some more questions.
So it's asking this question of ignorance. When you've done your site visits, are there any best practices where you're actually like hiring in residents back into positions, like maybe like the county as an example?
Yeah, so I think, it gets a little complicated in the jail because of the amount of background checks that you have to do, but what we've seen is, in Grafton, we saw residents teaching residents. So they had classes where, I think they had a AA group going that we had, that we, observed from the outside that was led by residents, as well as the violin class, I believe that he referenced. But what I think where your head is where our heart is, and so we're gonna try to see what we can do to engage, because I think we all know that peers and community folks from the community have the biggest impact on each other, and so trying to figure out how to engage folks in the work is gonna be really important.
I
just have a quick follow-up to my earlier questions, and I really appreciate Member Cannon raising the issues about something like very basic like laundry, like how is that not already? So I would really encourage you to, I haven't heard the words human-centered and trauma-informed design, but I heard a lot of the elements of those in things you talked about. But if you really want to be human-centered and trauma-informed, engaging people who are directly impacted in the design, in addition to the programming, which is hugely important, but also in the design, we saw just from that question the impact. Because you know what? If you're not thinking laundry, when you're thinking the laundry, developing the laundry room, it won't be big enough and you won't be able to do that. So thinking about engaging those focus groups, and I'm not talking about at every meeting, decision-making, but inviting members of the community to come in and participate in that, I think will give you better outcomes and make it more trauma-informed and human-centered, and will help to achieve racial justice in all of this. So I really think that that is an incredibly important element.
And in follow-up to that, I would just say that there are some really great resources and some people in this community who have a lot of expertise around the concepts of design justice. And so that's physical space design as much as it is programmatic design, as
Right.
much as it is organizational culture design. And so it's just picking up on what you said, not to use buzzwords, but to say, literally, we're building in the principle of equity and justice in the actual design of the space. And that means that we're engaging those most impacted by this to actually design the physical space. And I understand that there are a lot of, this is a complex process, I'm not trying to minimize that at all. But I think our charge of the case is to ensure that there's lived experience and elements of equity really woven throughout everything that touches the county inside and out.
Project is one of, that will bring all the community advisory groups that we've kind of formulated over the years. This is at $780. We have to get it right. And so, in just touring some of the jails, their programming, especially Franklin, I think I like that one the best. Their programming kept, was more of a modern kind of justice system that we all talk about, we wanted to see, and they're actually, to me, have put it in motion. Slowly integrating their different populations. So when we were down there, they decided that they were going to do the worst of the worst. In the criminal justice world, that was the murderers and the rapists. They were the ones that we actually spoke with, and they figured if, we could get them on board and everything open, the other little minor infraction individuals would roll right in. So I really like the program. I like that the thought had went as far as what do inmates usually fight about? What are the things that they fight about amongst each other while they're in there? How can we cut those down? So knowing and talking about what those things are: food. I'm hungry, I need extra food, commissary is shut down. Access to a phone, 24 hours where I can reach out to my family. Those kind of little things, that's why the open pod concept to me really won me over, because, just thinking about the laundry and things like that, those little integrated things. So I'm glad you brought that up, Director, because that was one of my things. Having someone that previously was incarcerated on all the committees and all the tours, so they can give us a different perspective. We haven't lived in those shoes, so we don't know. So I'm just happy about this project, and council's not mad or mean or anything. We just want all the things, all the things that we've heard about in the community from the activists. We get that. Chris is kind of, he's experiencing a little bit of that, but the council members, they hear that and get those phone calls, and we're just trying to not make everybody happy, but for those individuals that stay there, those individuals that work there, making it the best, best place ever.
Thank you all. Thank you for this presentation. It was really informative. And thank you for the questions from the members of the body. I apologize that we've run out of time, I think, for our updates from the DEI office and Human Resources. So if it's possible to get a written update through Clerk Bird, that would be very much appreciated. We are eager to hear your updates. I also kind of knew we might run low on time, but thought it might be valuable for you to hear this conversation and the questions of the members. So thank you for being present for that.
Thank you to our council.
Thank you to our councilwomen who have joined us today, and to the county executive who had to step away for another meeting. It's an honor to be part of these conversations. I feel like this is impactful and a service to our community on a very difficult concept like incarceration, but to do so in ways that are human-centered, trauma-informed, and humane is our best hope. And I'm grateful that this committee's part of this conversation in this way. Yes, please.
So, first of all, I was at Ginn Academy today, and we were doing some voter registration, so excuse my lax appearance. But I just wanted to say thank you all for the work that you do. I think we're missing a C in the name of this committee. You should add courageous in there, because this is hard work. It's necessary work. And I'm an activist myself. I was very excited when I joined this body, get to work with my colleagues, people that I have followed for many years and look up to, consider them to be my mentors and friends. But when the county declared racism as a public health crisis, I was like, yeah, this is the job that I want. I knew my whole life that I would work in this space. And I'm just so excited to work with so many caring professionals. The executive and his team they've been scouring every prison, every facility, best practices. We want to definitely create a trauma-informed space. I am entrusting them to, leave no stone unturned as we build this new facility. We want to work with our community partners to have the best agreements that we can, like do what we have with Cleveland. But this is a special group. This is a special leadership. Chair, I want to thank you for all that you did to usher us to this point. And so I'm open. I have an open door policy. If it's anything that I can do for anybody here, you want to have a conversation. If it's a task that you want to give me, well, I charge a little bit. No, but again, thank you for all the work that everybody here is doing to make sure that we have impact in this county. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Turner. That feels like a beautiful note to adjourn on. Thank you all very much.
No GARE update. But no GARE email.
Second. Thank you.